As a kid, I hated showers. To this day, I still prefer a bath. You don't want to know why. The point is, I wouldn't have been in the shower stall if I had a choice. But the summer I'd turned 14, I had no choice. I had manna, which not only nearly killed me, but also knocked my entire immune system out for months. Normally, that would be great. No school, lots of Netflix, Mum taking care of me. But I lived with my dad. So while he did take care of me by making sure I ate, he had no idea how to actually take care of me. He tried to force Tylenol down my throat twice. Once he yelled at me for crying, when I could uneat a frozen pizza because my throat was so sore. And the third time he made me go to the shower to help me sweat out the illness. Well, that night I dreamt about screaming in a shower. The next morning, my dad woke me up, filled my 4-bag with Pedialyte, and ordered me to shower again. He asked, I did, but I was scared. What if the shower flooded again? I was still weak, dizzy. No, thank you, I croaked. I'm fine. He tossed his paper and shoved me. Get your butt in there, or I'll make you miss your favorite TV show tonight. I missed SpongeBob SquarePants, so I went into the bathroom. To make a long story short, the shower didn't flood, but I was still scared to get in. I stood there for a good 5 minutes just staring at the glass doors. But then I heard a voice. Hurry up, you're wasting water. The voice sounded vaguely familiar, like something I heard at school. It was a girl's voice, so I assumed it was my neighbor. She had a teenage daughter. Maybe she was just practicing for a play. Still, I found it creepy that she could hear me in the shower. Okay, coming, I whispered. When I finally got in, the water was freezing. I screamed. I pressed the button to warm it up, but it didn't work. I was shivering. I could feel myself getting even sicker, and I was terrified. That's when the same voice cut through the noise. What are you doing? Hurry up and wash your hair. Now I was freaked out. Was my neighbor watching me? Was she insane? I turned the water as hot as I could. Then I leaned forward to try to plug the drain, but I passed out. I fell forward, and then I saw her, floating in front of me. Washes with long, dark hair like seaweed. She was smiling. Her lips were moving. But before I could hear what she was saying, the water shut off and she vanished. I stumbled out of the shower. Later, my dad told me that the power had flickered in the bathroom. And when he checked on me, I was sitting on the floor wrapped around the shower handle, rocking back and forth. I've never been able to explain that to him. I can't speak or spell her name, but if you're watching, I know you. You live in my neighborhood. We've made eye contact on walks before. You don't remember, and I'm not surprised. After that night, I moved to my aunt's house. I never told anyone what happened. I even denied it to the school psychologists they made me visit. But after a month, I was healthy enough to go back home. And to this day, I'm still haunted by the memory of that shower. Oh, and by the way, The power still flickers in that bathroom. And sometimes in the middle of the night, I swear I can hear that voice whispering my name. We didn't want to go to the school about it. Not yet. Maybe it was fear, or maybe we were worried they wouldn't believe us. Or worse, they would, and it would all spiral out of control. So Jessica and I decided to figure it out ourselves. She was the one who came up with the idea to check the janitor's closet. The crawl space has to connect somewhere, she said. If you saw an eye through that vent, someone had to be up there. Friday after practice, we didn't shower. Instead, we waited by the lockers until the hallway was quiet. Most of the girls had already left, and Coach had gone out to the parking lot to take a call. The janitor's closet was down the side hall. The door was always shut. But that day, it wasn't locked. Jessica turned the knob slowly and it clicked open without resistance. I'll never forget the smell. A mix of dust, chemicals, and something older, something sour. The room was small, lined with mops, buckets, and an old workbench. But there, in the back, was a wooden panel with a handle, a crawl space. We stared at it for a few seconds, unsure if we were about to make the dumbest decision. Just open it, I whispered. Jessica pulled the panel back. Dust poured out. Behind it was a tunnel, not wide, maybe 3 feet across. The walls were unfinished and coated in cobwebs. And in the darkness ahead, something metallic caught the light. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and pointed it in. There was a narrow vent, same placement as the one above the showers. Jessica crawled in first. I followed, heart hammering in my chest. The tunnel creaked beneath our weight. It felt like we were walking inside the bones of the building. Every sound magnified. We moved forward maybe 20 feet before stopping at the vent. Jessica knelt next to it. From here, we could see straight down into the shower stalls. All of them. Perfect view. I covered my mouth. There was a folded blanket in the corner, an empty soda bottle, a crushed granola wrapper. Someone had been spending time up here. I turned to Jessica. She didn't say a word. Then she pointed at something carved into the wooden floor. It was a name, Taylor, and next to it, scratched deeper into the wood. We backed out fast. Didn't speak until we were down the hall and back in the gym, pretending to tie our shoes like nothing happened. Our plan was simple. Go to Coach on Monday, report what we saw, do it right. We just had to make it through the weekend. Saturday morning, I woke up to a text from Jessica. Did you tell anyone? No, but I think someone knows. She sent a photo. It was her front porch. Sitting on the welcome mat was an envelope. Inside, a printed photo of her in the locker room. Looking up at the ceiling, we panicked. We thought about going to the police. But what did we have? A dusty crawl space and a creepy photo. It wasn't enough. And that's when I realized something else. If he could watch us through the vents, he could also hear us. We decided not to text anymore, not to talk about it at school. We'd meet after practice Monday and go straight to the office together. Only Jessica didn't show up. Coach said she went home sick. I texted her. No response. Called straight to voicemail. After practice, I stood in front of the janitor's closet again. It was locked this time. Tightly, I listened. There was no sound inside. But when I turned to leave, I swear I heard something behind the door. Just one word. Whispered in a voice I didn't recognize. Watch. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw that crawl space again, the vent, the blanket, the soda bottle, and now she wasn't answering her phone. It was like the story was swallowing her. I told my mum she wasn't feeling well and stayed home from school Tuesday. I wasn't actually sick, I just couldn't face the idea of walking into that locker room alone. But that afternoon, around 3 p.m., I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. She sounded shaken and confused, asking if I had heard from her daughter. Apparently, Jess never came home Monday after school. Her phone had been turned off. No messages. No friends had seen her. I lied and said we hadn't talked in a few days. And then I sat there in my room. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to go back to the school the next morning before class and find Coach. I knew what we saw. I knew who the only person could be watching us through that vent. And if Jessica had disappeared, I wasn't going to let it happen to me too. The school building was eerily quiet at 7 a.m. The hallways were dim. I headed straight to the gym wing, my footsteps echoing on the tile. I passed by. The janitor's closet, it was locked again. But as I moved past it, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. There was a camera mounted in the corner, just above the closet door. It wasn't the modern kind, just one of those old dom-style security cameras. I had no idea if it even worked. But if it did, maybe it caught something. Instead of going to Coach, I took a left toward the main office. I asked to speak to Mr. Harlan, the school's assistant principal. He wasn't exactly the warmest guy, but he listened carefully as I said. I was worried about a friend who hadn't come home, and mentioned that we'd seen something strange in the school's crawl space. I just told him we were exploring and saw signs that someone had been up there. When I mentioned the janitor's closet and the camera nearby, "You say you were near the maintenance corridor?" "Yes," I said. "There's a crawl space. We think someone's been using it too. Spy. He didn't write anything down. He didn't even ask me for more details. Just stared at me for a few seconds, and then nodded once. I'll take a look at the footage." I left the office feeling worse, not better. That entire day, I was on edge. Every sound, every creak, made me flinch. I half expected to see Jessica sitting at her desk when I walked into third period. It wasn't until the next morning that I got called down to the office. The secretary handed me a note and told me to go straight to the assistant principal's office. My stomach dropped. Mr. Harlan was sitting at his desk. He gestured for me to sit. Then he pulled a small monitor toward him, pressed a button, and leaned back. The screen lit up. It was black and white footage, Loris, grainy. The angle was high, pointed down at the hallway just outside the janitor's closet. At first, there was nothing. Then, at 5:42 p.m., he fast-forwarded. At 6:03, we reappeared, nervous, pale. We walked away quickly, until 6:09. That's when the janitor appeared. He stepped out of the shadows at the far end of the hall, walking slowly toward the closet. He was carrying something, a small toolkit. He stopped at the closet door, turned to look directly into the camera. For one horrifying second then, I stared at the screen. Mr. Harlan didn't speak. He paused the video and folded his hands. "Did you tell anyone else about this?" he asked quietly. I shook my head. "Only you." He nodded again. "Good." He turned the screen off. And that was it. No police. No follow-up questions. No mention of Jessica. Just, "We'll handle it." I left that office with my heart in my throat. The moment Mr. Harlan said, "We'll handle it," I knew he wouldn't. Maybe he didn't want the hassle. Or maybe more terrifyingly, he already knew. Either way, I felt like I'd just made everything worse. I went to class and tried to act normal, but I was completely checked out. I kept glancing at the door, half expecting someone to walk in and pull me out. I couldn't shake the image of the janitor staring directly into the security camera, like he knew exactly who would be watching it later. When the final bell rang, I waited until most of the building had cleared before I left. I didn't want to be seen heading home alone. I didn't even go to my locker. I just slipped out a side door and walked straight to my friend Rachel's place, a few blocks away. I didn't tell her everything, just said I didn't feel safe at home that night. Her mum didn't ask questions. I crashed on their couch and kept my phone face down the whole night. Every buzz made my stomach turn. The next morning, I debated whether to go back to school at all. But staying home meant being alone but still myself. Maybe they'd fired him quietly. Maybe I'd walk in and someone would say, "We took care of it," and everything would feel different. But when I got there, nothing had changed. Mr. Haywood, the janitor, was mopping the main hall. I stopped mid-step when I saw him. He didn't look up, just kept swaying the mop in slow figure eights across the tile. As I passed, I felt his eyes follow me. That day, I couldn't focus on anything. I skipped lunch and sat in the library. Jessica still hadn't turned up. Her mum had posted something vague on Facebook about any info helping, but there was no news coverage, no cops at school, no questions. It was like she never existed. I couldn't let it go. Not after what we saw. Not after what we found in that crawl space. That night, not the closet. That was too risky now. Instead, I wanted to find the camera feed, the system that Mr. Harlan used to watch that tape. I knew the office had a storage room behind the receptionist's. I figured if there was a DVR set up, it would be there. The building closed at 8 p.m., I waited until 7:45 and slipped in through the back door. Using a code a friend had once given me for late band practice, the place was dead quiet. Every step echoed off the linoleum floors. I moved quickly, ducking past empty classrooms, slipping through the main office doors. The records room was locked. I expected that. What I didn't expect was how easy it was to pop the handle with a laminated library card, and a little shaking. Inside it was cramped and dusty. Filing cabinets lined the back wall, but on the left was a small metal rack, blinking lights and a DVR system humming quietly. A small monitor sat on top, its screen dark. It flickered on. Rows of camera feeds appeared, most of them grainy and black and white, showing static shots of hallways, stairwells, entrances. I scanned quickly. Feed 17, locker room crawl space. The camera was angled down from inside the crawl tunnel, pointing toward the vent above the showers. Why the hell would a school camera be installed up there? I leaned closer. The feed was live, and there was movement. Someone was crawling through the space, not fast, just shifting slowly in the shadows. Then they stopped, right at the edge of the vent. They turned to face the camera directly, and smiled. Eyes wide, face lit by a faint flashlight. Grinning. I couldn't hear it, but I could read his lips. You came back. I didn't move. I just stood there in that storage room, frozen, staring at the monitor. He didn't blink. He just kept pointing, not at the camera anymore, but at the vent, as if he knew I was watching and wanted to remind me exactly where he was and where he could go. Then, slowly, he backed away. The crawl space went still again, just empty black. I slammed the monitor off. I didn't take a screenshot. I didn't record it. I should have. I know that. But my body was shaking so hard. I could barely stand. All I could think about was getting out of that room, out of that school, out of that entire building. But as I turned to leave, I heard something behind the door. Footsteps. Slow. Even approaching from the hallway. I panicked, looking around for a place to hide. There was nowhere, no window, no second exit, nothing but filing cabinets. The door handle jiggled once, then stopped. I pressed myself into the corner, trying to quiet my breath. Then I heard the footsteps retreat. It could have been anyone, a random student, but I didn't believe that. Not for a second. When I was sure, it was clear, I slipped out, crept through the office. I ran home without stopping once. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling. I kept thinking, if there's one camera in the crawl space, there could be others. I thought about how easy it would be to place a few more vents. How many blind spots there were in a building that old. How many places a man like that could disappear into. The next morning, I didn't go to school. Instead, I biked to the public library. I used one of their computers and started digging, not just into Mr. Hayward. At first I found nothing. No arrests. No lawsuits. Then I stumbled across a cached version of a school newspaper article from 2012, buried in a blog archive. The headline read, "Student raises concerns over locker room privacy." It mentioned a senior named Daniela Torres, who claimed she'd seen a shadow moving behind a vent in the corner of the girls' showers. Her complaint was dismissed. She transferred schools shortly after. I googled her name, found an old Facebook profile, still active. I messaged her. I didn't expect a reply, but a few hours later, she responded, "You're not crazy. It happened to me too, and I wasn't the only one." We started messaging. She told me about the time she stayed late for track practice and noticed the same sound, the faint tapping above the tile. How she told a teacher, but nothing came of it. How the janitor at the time, Hayward. How she started feeling watched all the time. And how, one day, she came back from gym class to find her locker completely open, just disturbed, moved. She said, yes, but the officer she spoke to told her it was an internal matter for the school to handle. She never heard from them again. I asked if she still lived nearby. She did. We made a plan to meet at the coffee shop by the old strip mall the next day. That evening, I got a call from a blocked number. I didn't answer. They left a voicemail. I didn't want to listen to it, but I had to. It was about 10 seconds of silence. Then, the unmistakable sound of a metal vent creaking open, followed by the soft whisper of my name. Just once. Not a question. Not a call. A statement. The next morning, I met Daniela at the coffee shop. She was older now, probably mid-20s, wearing dark sunglasses and a denim jacket with frayed sleeves. We sat in the corner, away from the windows. She didn't want to be seen. I never thought anyone else would bring this up again, she said, stirring her coffee with shaking hands. Most people just tried to forget it. I told her everything, Jessica. The crawl space, the camera feed, even the voicemail. She didn't react. With disbelief. No scoffing. No patronizing head tilt. Just a quiet, steady look that made my stomach twist. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small manila envelope. Inside were 3 printed photos, grainy and dark, clearly shot from a distance. Each one showed a vent. Not the same one, either. Different shapes, different ceilings. One above a classroom. One in the nurse's office. One in the library. All of these were places I used to see him, she whispered. Not always his face, but shadows, movement, just enough to know someone was there. I asked why she hadn't gone public. I tried, she said, but he's smart. He doesn't do anything direct, nothing you can pin. He makes you feel crazy, and by the time you realize what's happening, it's too late. I showed her. The voicemail, she listened to it once, set the phone down, and nodded. That's him. We sat in silence for a while. She kept glancing at the door. I'll help you, she said finally, but not through the school. They covered it up before. They'll do it again. If you really want this exposed, we need proof they can't. Erase, she handed me a flash drive. It has a map of the crawlspace system. I found it in the blueprints when I worked on the yearbook. There are more vents, more access points, but only one spot where all the feeds come together, where She looked me straight in the eye. The basement archive room, under the old auditorium. I didn't even know the school had a basement. Later that day, I called in sick again. I wasn't about to go back in during school hours, not with him still walking the halls. So I waited until nightfall, rode my bike around the back entrance, and snuck in through the boiler room the same way students used to sneak in during Halloween. The air was thick, damp, and metallic. The school creaked around me like it was alive. I made my way past the gym, past the lockers, down the hallway that led to the disused auditorium. It had been condemned after a roof leak last year, supposedly off, but the lock on the side door had been broken long before that. Inside the room was pitch black, except for a sliver of moonlight cutting through a broken skylight. The seats were covered in dusty tarps. The stage was bare. I walked behind the curtain and found the trap door Daniela mentioned. It opened with a slow groan. I descended into the dark. The stairs led to a narrow hallway, concrete walls, flickering lights, and that horrible sour smell I remembered from the janitor's closet. I held my breath and followed the corridor until I found the room. A metal door, no label, unlocked. Unlocked, inside, were rows of old AV equipment, discarded file boxes, and a rusted set of monitors stacked against the wall. One of them was on live feed. From inside the crawl space, I stepped closer. The screen showed a girl, curled up, eyes wide. It wasn't Jessica. It was someone else, another student, another victim, watching the same vent, waiting for someone to help. I grabbed my phone and took as many pictures as I could. Then I heard the door click shut behind me. The sound of the metal door locking behind me echoed through the concrete like a gunshot. I spun around and grabbed the handle. It wouldn't budge. No rattle, no give, just sealed. My flashlight flickered. The temperature dropped. I was underground, alone, and someone knew I was there. I pressed my back to the wall, forcing myself to stay calm. I still had my phone. No service, of course. Thick, concrete walls, buried under an abandoned auditorium. The signal didn't stand a chance. I texted Daniela anyway, just in case something got through later. Just a single word, trapped. Then I turned back to the monitors. There were 6 of them. 4 showed dark, dusty vents. 1 showed the crawlspace view from before the girl. Still visible, her eyes darting toward the noise she must have heard. And the last one, it showed me, standing in that basement room, a grainy, black and white version of myself. I stepped closer and looked up there. Tucked into the corner was a tiny pinhole camera, barely visible above the light fixture. So that's how he did it. He didn't just watch. He recorded. He documented everything. I turned back to the wall of shelves. Boxes, piles of old yearbooks, cassette tapes, unlabeled hard drives. Dust choked the air. Some of it looked untouched for decades, but the row of hard drives was clean, organized. Someone had been here recently. I grabbed one and looked closer. A label was scrawled in marker on the side. GR52318. Another, AT, the 11th of March, 19. Initials, dates, names, maybe. Victims. I yanked the drawer open wider and stared in horror at the dozens of other drives inside. They stretched back over a decade, all marked, all catalogued. He wasn't just watching. He was archiving, keeping records, collecting them. This was an impulse. It wasn't curiosity. It was a system. Suddenly, I heard something behind the wall. Not the door, the wall. a slow, deliberate dragging sound, like someone pulling their body across wood and insulation. The crawl space, he was in it, coming closer. I didn't wait to see what he'd do next. I yanked the drive I was holding and shoved it in my pocket. Then I pulled the oldest one I could find and stuffed it in too. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the third one, and it clattered loudly across the floor. The dragging stopped, silenced, and a different sound. The soft screech of a vent cover being pushed open. I backed toward the far end of the room, toward another door, this one chained but not locked. I rattled it open and slipped through into another narrow hall, barely lit by a dying fluorescent bulb overhead. Somewhere behind me, I heard a low voice whisper my name, drawn out, taunting. I didn't look back. I ran. I burst out of the basement, stairwell, and into the abandoned auditorium. It was darker now, the moonlight mostly gone. I sprinted through the seats, breath ragged, barely seeing where I was going. Just as I reached the exit, I heard movement in the wings of the stage. Heavy footsteps, but slow, measured. He wasn't chasing me, he was herding me. I ran anyway, out the door, into the corridor, and through the school's side entrance. Once outside, I didn't stop until I reached the main road and flagged down a passing car. Some random woman in a van who looked startled but opened the door when she saw my face. She drove me to the nearest gas station. I called the police. From there, told them everything. The girl, the cameras, the crawl space, the drives. They said they'd send a car. That was 2 hours ago. No one came. The police never showed. I waited in that gas station parking lot for nearly 3 hours, clutching the flash drives in my jacket pocket and staring at every pair of headlights that pulled into the lot. Eventually, the cashier gently told me I had to go. He must have seen my face, because he offered to call again. But I just shook my head and left. I biked to Daniela's apartment on the other side of town. She opened the door after the first knock. I must have looked like hell's wetty, dust-covered, eyes wide and red. I handed her the drives without saying a word. She pulled me inside and locked the door behind us. Triple locked. Then she dragged over a chair from her dining table and sat me down in front of her laptop. "I've got an external reader," she said, plugging one of the drives in. "Let's see what he's been hiding." The first file opened almost immediately. No encryption, no password, just a folder labeled GR_05_23_18. Inside were dozens of video clips, each one dated, time-stamped. The first clip was just over 5 minutes long. It opened with the unmistakable grainy footage of a locker room ceiling angled down through a vent, looking directly at a row of showers. We both leaned closer. The clip showed a girl, maybe 15 or 16. She stood under the water for a while, unaware. Then she paused, looked up, wrapped her towel around herself, and left. Next clip, different girl, different angle, same setup, same reaction. It wasn't explicit. There was no sound, but it was deeply invasive, and it kept going, clip after clip. Dozens of them, all through the vents, all from hidden crawlspace angles, showers, locker rooms, classrooms, even the nurse's office, each labeled dot, each archived dot. Daniela closed the folder, her hands visibly trembling. She opened another oldest one I'd grabbed, marked RT 040211. This time there were fewer clips, lower quality, but they were worse. One showed a girl crying in a bathroom stall. She was wearing a cheer uniform. There was a faint knock on the stall door. She said something, too quiet to hear. Then the clip cut to another angle, this time through the narrow gap under the door. A hand slowly reached inside. Daniela slammed the laptop shut. "That's enough," she whispered. We sat in silence for a long time. Then I asked her the question I'd been too afraid to say out loud. What happened to the other girls? She stared at the wall for a while before answering. "I tried to find out once, years ago, after I graduated. I reached out to some of them, the ones I could track down. Most of them never responded. A few accounts were deleted. One girl's mum messaged me back and told me to never contact them again. She looked back at me, eyes hollow. Jessica's not the first to disappear." We copied the files to Daniela's laptop and hid the originals in a shoebox behind her closet. Then we started writing everything down, not just what I'd seen, but what she'd found over the years, blueprints, faculty records, even a partial list of student complaints that never made it past the school's internal wellness office. It was more than enough to go to the media, to expose the school, the janitor, maybe even the administration. But we had to be careful. If he, or anyone protecting him, found out we had that footage, we'd be next. We decided to wait one day. Just one time to organize everything into a proper report, create backups, send the footage anonymously to multiple sources. That night, I stayed at Daniela's place. She insisted. Triple locked the door again, closed every window, and still I didn't sleep. At around 3:30 a.m., I got up to get water. Her apartment was silent. But outside, I heard it, a metallic click. I peeked out through the living room blinds. Nothing at first. Then I saw it, across the street, under a broken street lamp. Someone was standing still, too far to make out clearly. But he didn't move, didn't approach, just stood there watching. I didn't wake Daniela. I just stayed at the window until the figure was gone. The next morning, everything fell apart. We booted up Daniela's laptop to organize the footage, only to find her desktop empty. The folders were gone. The recycle bin was empty too. We checked the backups, all wiped. All 3 flash drives we'd hidden, still in the box but corrupted, unreadable. I stared at the screen in disbelief. We unplugged it. It wasn't even online. Daniela opened the terminal and ran a log check. Last access, 4:02. A.M. We both knew what that meant. He'd been here, in the apartment, while we slept. She tore her place apart, looking for anything: fingerprints, footprints, signs of forced entry. There was nothing. Just one thing left behind, inside the shoebox. Underneath the corrupted drives was a photo. It was me, asleep on the couch, taken from just a few feet away. The photo of me sleeping hit harder than any footage, any crawlspace vent, any whisper through a wall. It wasn't just proof he could reach us. It was proof that he already had. He had been inside the apartment, inside a locked space, while both of us were unconscious. He stood close enough to take a photo, yet we hadn't heard a sound. That kind of silence. It's not human, it's practiced. Daniela sank to the floor. I had never seen her cry before, not even when we watched the videos. But this broke her. "This was supposed to be safe," she whispered. "We didn't even call the police this time. What was the point?" He'd erased our files, corrupted the drives, walked into a locked apartment, and left without a trace. We weren't dealing with someone impulsive or sloppy. We were dealing with a man who had done this, and gotten away with it for years. And we were sure now he wasn't working alone. There was no way Haywood could access our laptop, know about our exact flash drive location, and monitor our every move unless someone else was feeding him information. The school knew. Maybe not everyone, but enough. The silence was the system. We stayed up all night, this time with knives from the kitchen and a baseball bat leaning against the front door. Every sound made us flinch. I kept my shoes on in case I had to run. By sunrise, we were done being afraid. If they're going to erase everything, Daniela said, then we'll make it public before they get the chance. We took what we remembered, names of the folders, dates, everything we'd seen, and wrote it out as a full report. Daniela still had copies of the blueprints and vent layouts. I recreated the photo of myself sleeping, standing in the same spot, same pose, same couch, this time with my eyes wide open, staring into the lens. We took new photos of the crawlspace blueprints and labeled the most suspicious vent locations, and then we uploaded it all, not to one place, but to dozens. Reddit X, formerly Twitter, Google Drive, links to journalists, DMD creators of local true crime podcasts, anonymous tips to newspapers. We even sent it to a couple of YouTube narrators known for telling creepy stories. By noon, people had started to respond. Anonymous users messaged Daniela with their own stories. Former students, all women, describing strange locker room noises, misplaced belongings, teachers dismissing their concerns. One girl claimed she'd transferred schools after seeing someone's face through a ceiling vent above her homeroom. Another posted a pixelated photo of her locker, marked with a black symbol that had appeared overnight, a scratched spiral carved into the metal, similar to something I'd seen inside the crawlspace. The comments were brutal. Some called us liars. Others said it was just viral bait, but a few knew. This happened to my sister. I remember seeing him watching me through the gym ceiling. My story's the same. The silence was breaking. That night, Daniela and I tried to stay awake again, but exhaustion eventually won. I crashed on the couch, still in my jeans, hoodie zipped to my chin, phone in hand. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to a sound. Not inside this time. Outside, the soft hum of an idling car. I crept to the window. There was a white van across the street, unmarked. Lights off, engine running. I stared for what felt like 10 minutes. Then, slowly, it drove away. No one got out. No one approached the building, just a presence. A message. The next day, we learned that Jessica's mum had pulled her missing person report. Just like that, removed. No explanation. When someone on Reddit asked her about it, she deleted her account. Daniela and I stared at the screen. That's not right, she muttered. We texted her old number. Nothing. I texted Jessica's phone again, for the first time in over a week. It delivered, but there was no response. Then, 20 minutes later, I got a message back. Just one word. Stop. The message haunted me. Just that one word. Stop. It was like Jessica herself had spoken it, or whatever was left of her, if she was even still alive. Daniela stared at the screen for a long time and said, "That's not her." I agreed. Jessica would never text that. Not after everything we'd seen. By the end of the day, 3 of the Reddit threads were gone. 2 YouTube channels had taken down the videos that referenced our story. One of the podcast hosts we messaged emailed Daniela back saying, "Sorry. Legal reasons, can't touch this." The school wasn't just ignoring it anymore. They were scrubbing it. I don't know if it was lawyers, threats, hush money, or something else. But posts were vanishing faster than we could track them. Victims were ghosting us. People who had deemed support the day before now deleted their accounts. Even Daniela's old friend from yearbook, the one who'd helped her find the blueprints back in high school, blocked her after we shared the map again publicly. The truth wasn't just being buried, it was being erased. And we were running out of time. "I'm going back in," I said. Daniela turned to me like I'd just said I was walking into a fire. "Are you out of your mind? We're losing control of the story. He's one step ahead every time. There's something we missed." She shook her head. "You already got into the archive room. That's where the cameras led. That's where the drives were." I leaned forward. "What if that's not the only place?" That night, I broke in one final time. This time, I wasn't sneaking around the back. I walked straight through the front doors at 10:30 p.m. I knew the security guards. Rotated shifts around midnight. I'd watched them from the street 3 nights in a row, and I'd timed every hallway camera blind spot from Daniela's research. I knew exactly how long I had in each corridor. I wasn't looking for the crawl space this time. I was going higher. Daniela had spotted something in the oldest blueprint. A note scribbled next to the attic access panel above the science wing. "Control room, no public access." It hadn't appeared on the updated maps, not in decades, but the infrastructure was still there. I climbed the maintenance stairs to the 3rd floor. Flashlight flicking in and out. Every creak under my shoes sounded like an alarm. Above the chemistry lab, I found it. A rusted ladder behind a panel door. I climbed up slowly, the metal groaning under my weight, and pushed open the square hatch at the top. The air was still, stale. Insulation hung like spiderwebs from the wooden beams. The smell was a mix of mildew and something sharper cleaner maybe, like alcohol or bleach. I crawled forward on all fours until I saw it. A wooden box structure wedged into the corner of the attic, wired into what looked like a massive old breaker, and a chair, just a simple office chair, with deep scratch marks on the floor beneath it. I sat down and turned toward the windowed front of the box. It overlooked the auditorium. No glass, just mesh. Someone had built a watching booth. Not for lighting, not for sound, just watching. There were holes drilled beneath the booth. Small ones, like pinholes, in the floor. And beneath those holes, on the stage, right where we had heard footsteps months ago, I could now see faint black dots in a pattern, like markers, positions. He had watched entire assemblies from here. Graduations, plays, talent shows, maybe even Jessica's class. I stood up, heart racing, when I noticed a stack of items in the corner notebooks. I flipped one open, names, dates, times, G, R, Jantiga, lewat 25 menit PM. Changed routine. Use middle shower. 80 for 10 PM. Slipped. 22 seconds. Exposed. It was a log dot. Every girl. Every time. Every note. And at the very end of the final notebook. JS. Getting suspicious. Remove soon. I dropped the notebook. Then I heard a creak. Behind me, I spun around. But there was no one there. Just the sound of something crawling through insulation. The sound came again closer this time. I backed away from the booth, flashlight trembling in my hand. My foot caught on something soft, and I nearly tripped over a bundle of cloth. I knelt down, swept the beam over it, tanned, froze. It was a hoodie, Jessica's HOODIE. Her name was written on the inside tag. the fabric still stained with dried mud and something darker. I didn't scream, I just stopped breathing. Something skittered across the ceiling beams behind me. Not fast, not like an animal. Slow, methodical, human. I turned the light in a wide arc. No one there, then. I realized where the noise was going toward. The vent that led back into the auditorium walls. He was leaving. I lunged toward the mesh window and looked down below on the auditorium stage. A trapdoor creaked open. A figure climbed out slowly, hunched and lumbering. The janitor, same grey jumpsuit, same heavy boots. But now I saw the mask. It wasn't a janitor's uniform anymore. It was a costume, a disguise, something worn deliberately, like a second skin. His face underneath was slack, pale, almost featureless. But his eyes, they locked onto mine immediately. From all the way across the auditorium, he knew. He saw me. He raised one hand and pointed at the booth, then tapped his wrist, like checking a watch. Time's up, I bolted. Scrambled down the attic hatch, slid down the ladder. So fast I burned my palms. I didn't care. I ran down the hall, through the science wing, dodging lockers and spilling papers as I sprinted toward the back exit. Somewhere behind me, I heard the squeal of metal vents swinging open, ducts groaning. He was in the walls again, chasing me. Slammed through the emergency door and didn't stop running until I was 3 blocks from the school, gasping for breath in the cold night air. Only then did I realize I still had the notebook, the one with Jessica's name. I brought it to Daniela the next morning. She didn't say anything at first, just flipped through the pages with shaking hands, mouth tight. "This is it," she said. "This is the proof no one can scrub." We scanned every page, uploaded them, this time to private servers. Encrypted. Backups. We mailed hard copies to 3 journalists. Sent a copy to Jessica's mum. This time. We didn't wait. The story exploded in 2 days. News outlets picked it up. Local reporters started asking questions. The school went into lockdown. Then silence. Haywood was nowhere to be found. His house empty. His bank accounts frozen. Jessica's mum finally responded. She hadn't removed the report. She'd never even filed one. The police never let her. A week later, they found Jessica alive, but barely. She'd been in a crawl space under the auditorium. Floor, half conscious, wrapped in blankets and plastic sheeting, food wrappers, empty water bottles, a single flashlight left on. She wasn't alone. They found old bones, smaller ones, not hers. The week after Jessica was found should have felt like a victory. It didn't. The footage was gone. The school remained silent. Haywood had vanished. No trace, no name on file with the district. The news covered it like a minor scandal, a disturbing anomaly. The headlines were clinical. Student found in hidden area. Authorities investigating custodial activity. Then it all faded, just like Daniela warned. I stayed up most nights, scrolling through forums, reading theories. Some people claimed it was a hoax. Others believed Haywood was part of a larger ring. A few even suggested the school wasn't the first, that other institutions had covered up similar disappearances. The more I read, the more I realized one thing. Jessica was never the end of this story. She was the warning. The notebooks Haywood kept, the ones we leaked, were never fully decoded. Daniela had been poring over them with AI software, trying to parse the shorthand and initials. One night, she texted me, "I think the letters on the margins are coordinates, floor plans. We met at her new apartment, which had a motion sensor camera pointed directly at the only door. She pulled out a blown-up scan of one of the pages, now covered in circled symbols and notes. "These aren't just names," she said. "These are locations." She pointed to the top right corner of the page. "Look at this. It says G2, which matches the girls' locker room. But then beneath it is a 3-digit code, S17. That's not a locker number." She pulled out the oldest blueprint of the school. "It's a tunnel scepter." I leaned in. "The ones under the gym." "Exactly." The blueprint showed old Cold War era bomb shelter. Corridors supposedly sealed off in the 80s. But the annotations Haywood left behind lined up perfectly with unused space on the map. Hallways with no entry. Storage with no visible door. Daniela traced them with a highlighter. He marked them all. Not just where the vents connect, but where they feed into. This whole school has a second layer, and no one had ever been inside. Yet we planned the entry carefully. Unlike the attic, this wasn't about sneaking in. We had to bring tools, bolt cutters, heavy flashlights, a spare battery pack for the camera, and gloves. Daniela had a stun gun she wasn't shy about showing me. "If he's down there," she said, "I'm not playing around." We waited for a Sunday night. The gym would be empty. No events, minimal security. The entrance was hidden under the northeast bleachers, the ones closest to the emergency exit doors. We used a crowbar to remove 2 panels, revealing a hatch bolted shut. The bolts were old, greasy, but not rusted. Someone had been maintaining them. It took 20 minutes to open it below. A ladder, metal, cold, descending into darkness. I went first. The smell hit instantly. Mildew, sweat, and something sour. Not quite decay, but close. The tunnel floor was dirt and cracked concrete. Cables lined the walls, running into heavy junction boxes marked in faded red tape. Graffiti from the 90s lined parts of the ceiling, but it ended abruptly, like the taggers didn't go further than a few yards. They were smart, we weren't. We followed the coordinates from the notebook. Daniela read them off, checking our map with a penlight. S17 was 20 steps east, then 15 south. We found it behind a collapsed shelf. It was a door, metal, padlocked, fresh, scuff marks on the floor beneath it. We broke it open. Inside, a square room, small, 8 by 10 feet. No lights in the center, a chair. Strapped to the back was a set of Polaroids, clipped together by a rusted paper clip. My hand shook as I picked them up. The first showed Jessica. Early days, maybe the first week she went missing. She was asleep on the floor, curled up in blankets. A flashlight beside her. The second showed another girl. Not Jessica, different hair, different build. Third photo, same girl. Weeks later, she was thinner, eyes sunken, looking directly at the camera. I passed them to Daniela. She paused. "This isn't from our year," she said. "Look at the date on the corner." There were more rooms, each about the same size. Some had chairs. Others had shelves filled with old, labeled VHS tapes. Most had personal belongings, clothing, textbooks, even wallets. Victims' belongings. Daniela stopped in front of one door and held up her phone light, scrawled in marker. Just above the frame, "Quiet girls don't get reported." She didn't say anything after that. Neither did I, eventually. The tunnels opened into a larger space, a concrete vault, probably meant for storage in case of emergencies, now converted into a full surveillance hub. Wires crisscrossed the ceiling, duct taped to power strips. 4 monitors, sat on folding tables, all powered by a portable generator that still ran barely, and next to it, a metal locker. We pried it open. Inside were over 40 flash drives, each labeled, each time-stamped. Some dated back to 2003. This wasn't Haywood's sick collection. It was an operation, a system he'd been collecting, storing, archiving, not just for himself. These drives weren't hidden. They were organized, designed to be found, accessed, passed along. Daniela whispered what we were both thinking. He's not alone. We heard footsteps then. Not far, not loud, but unmistakable. In a space this dead silent, even a shuffle echoed like thunder. We turned off our lights, killed the monitors, sat in total darkness, not daring to breathe. The footsteps passed by the corridor, entrance, then paused. We could hear someone breathing, then a voice, low and rough. "I know you're in there." The voice came from just around the corner, gravelly, low. Not quite Haywood's, not quite anyone's I recognized. "I know you're in there," it repeated, calm and patient. A tone that didn't ask, it stated. We didn't move. I gripped Daniela's arm and she squeezed back hard. The locker of drives was still open behind us. The only sound now was the faint click of the generator cooling and the soft buzz of the monitors we'd just powered down. Footsteps again. Slower now, closer than they stopped. We waited in complete darkness, barely breathing. After what felt like forever, the voice spoke again, this time softer. She was supposed to be the last. Then silence, no footsteps walking away. No more breathing. Just gone. Daniela finally clicked her light back on. Her face was pale, sweaty, jaw clenched. We slowly crept to the hallway. It was empty, but on the floor, at the intersection, placed deliberately in our path, was a photo. I picked it up. It was Jessica, but not from when she was taken. It was her, now sitting in the hospital bed, wearing a gown, looking into the vent above her. We ran, out of the tunnels, through the gym, out the same exit we'd entered. We didn't speak. We didn't look back. I drove to Daniela's with shaking hands, checking the rearview mirror every few seconds. She paced in the living room while I locked every door and window. Then we sat at her dining table and stared at the locker of flash drives we'd brought with us. "Someone followed us," she whispered. "They were in the tunnels before we got there." "More than one," I said. "Had to be." She nodded. "They've been watching the hospital too." I plugged one of the drives into her old laptop. We braced ourselves, no encryption, just folders, labels with initials and years. The first file opened instantly, a high-angle shot of a hospital. Hallway, the timestamp, was from just 3 days ago. The angle came from inside a vent. We skipped forward. Another folder, labeled GH_archives. Hundreds of screenshots, forum threads, tweets, emails, even PDFs of news article drafts that were never published. Someone had been monitoring the narrative, tracking the spread of the story and deleting as needed. Daniela scrolled through a folder titled School Rotation Candidates. It included names, principals, custodians, counselors, photos, job histories, all with one disturbing pattern. Each had worked at a different school every 2 to 3 years. Same type of transfer, same generic reason: staff restructuring, budget cuts, or district reassignment. We clicked on a name, Harold Wynne. A face popped up. It was Haywood only. Not just from our school, there were older ID photos from 4 other schools across the state. 5 names, 5 identities. Same man, over 20 years. He had never been caught because he never stayed long, and wherever he went, students disappeared. We went back to the drives. There was a master log, an actual spreadsheet, buried deep in a folder labeled Ox Record Clean. It listed every documented incident, what they called it, with a coded outcome column. 1 for recovered, 0 for missing, X for contained. Jessica's name was on it, next to her. 1. I scrolled further. Daniela grabbed my hand. Her name was there too, under a 2014 entry, with a code, 0, missing. She whispered, "But you were never," I started. She shook her head. "They tried." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I just didn't let them." The list went on. Hundreds of names, years of entries, different schools, different towns, same pattern. And at the very top of the spreadsheet, in bold text, was a title, Incident Report, Ventilation Network Monitoring Project, Phase 4. We stared at each other. It was never just one man. It was a program. The laptop crashed 5 minutes later. Hard shutdown. No blue screen, no power at all. Just dead. When we tried to reboot, the fan clicked twice and stopped. Burnt. Daniela tried the second drive, corrupted the third, blank the fourth. Empty folders. Only one file remained. A video, just under 10 seconds. Long. It opened to a grainy shot of my bedroom. A still image taken from my vent. Then a glitch. Then black dot. Then a message. Your story ends here. After the laptop died, we knew we were being watched again. Not just monitored, tracked. The moment we accessed the truth, something flicked a switch. Somewhere in a server we'd never reach. Our location, our searches, our devices, all flagged. That message, your story ends here, it wasn't a threat. It was a command. And yet, we didn't stop. We see OULDN, single quotes to Daniela backed up every piece of data we had left onto micro SD cards. She sealed them into old USB adapters and mailed them to 5 people she trusted, none of whom lived in the state. She didn't even tell me their names. We knew the drives would be corrupted eventually if they were found. But paper still worked. Memory still worked. Names etched into notebooks couldn't be deleted with a keystroke. It was getting colder. Outside, one night, about a week later, I went back to my apartment to grab a few things. I hadn't slept there since we returned from the tunnels. Something about that couch, the place he'd taken that photo of me, made my skin crawl. As I was leaving with my bag, I saw something on the vent. It had been unscrewed. A note was tucked into the metal slat, folded carefully. Deliberate. I unfolded it slowly. Scrawled in smeared pencil were 5 words. We cleaned this place before. I moved out that night. Daniela was already halfway packed. She had booked a train under a fake name and didn't tell me the destination. She said she'd send a signal, a phrase only I would recognize, if anything ever felt off. Before she left, she said one last thing. The ones who stayed quiet, they're still there. Not dead, just listening. I didn't understand at the time, not fully. Weeks passed. The story died again. News reports faded. Jessica and her mum left town. Her social media went dark. The school renovated the gym. The tunnels were sealed according to one board. Journalists' blog. We kept waiting for someone to blow the whistle, but no one did. All the girls who had sent us tips online stopped responding. The teachers who'd once looked uneasy, Their expressions were blank now, almost like they'd never flinched. Haywood's name never returned to any database. His face never matched any known identity. The trail was erased, clean, professionally, systematically, and just when I was starting to accept that it would all disappear, I got a letter, no stamp, no return address. Inside was a photo of a school, not ours, a different state. Same architectural layout, same vent placement, same red spiral graffiti on the boiler room wall. Attached was a note. They moved. I kept digging. Every time I followed the trail, I found more schools. Abandoned ones, active ones, campuses with sudden staff turnovers, custodians who never appeared in staff directories, security cameras facing away from locker room entrances, archived articles pulled offline, days after publishing, always the same, always denied, but always real. So here's the truth. It wasn't just one janitor. It was a network. It wasn't just voyeurism. It was control. It wasn't just silence. It was compliance. They find the quiet schools, the underfunded ones, the ones with shadows long enough to hide in. They put people there who never speak unless spoken to. They don't need supernatural powers. All they need is time and vents and enough silence. I haven't heard from Daniela in 6 months, but last week, someone slid an envelope under my door. Inside were 3 Polaroids. Each showed the same thing, an auditorium, same bleachers, same TRA, PDOOR. In the 3rd photo, someone is watching from the booth above, a familiar silhouette basque on eyes shining. On the back of the photo was a single phrase: "Quiet girls don't get reported."